Tanya, thank you. That smile light up a room. Hey, my name is Brian Sullivan, and it's great to be here, and I hope you learned something over the next 40 minutes. If not, I at least hope you're mildly entertained with what I'm going to share with you today. My company's called Precise Selling, and my objective is real simple when I work with companies. I teach companies and salespeople how to steal customers from their biggest competitor. I teach, all right, that's not a bad thing. I teach them how to sell more products and services than ever before to current customers, and then I teach them how to discount less, right? And so some of the principles that I'm going to talk about today in my presentation, known as increasing sales with current customers with pride, will in fact help you steal customers. It will help you add more value to current customers, and hopefully we could discount a little bit less. Now, before I get into the nuts and bolts of the presentation, I want to share with you a trip that I made not long ago. And I got an opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. And they brought me in to speak to a group of CEOs, and I teach presentation skills. And essentially, I teach them how to not put people to sleep. Right? And so I got in a day early, and I wasn't supposed to present until 8 in the morning. So I'd been traveling a bunch that week, and I figured I probably should exercise a little bit, right? So I'm in my hotel room, and I put on my red, white, and blue Speedo jogging outfit. It's very attractive. And I walk down the steps of the Hilton Hotel, and I find myself on a very popular street. It's known as Pennsylvania Avenue, right? Now, there's a pretty popular house on Pennsylvania Avenue. What is it? Share it with me. See, it's a White House. All right, so I start my jog, right? Now, I didn't plan on touring this day, but I jogged past this White House, right? So I take a look at this thing, and I stopped. Now, my wife says I have a sickness. She says I have a lot of sicknesses, but one of my key sicknesses is that I'm always looking for some learning lesson, some little valuable insight that I can share with my kids, my wife, and of course my audiences. And I started looking through these gates, and I started thinking of the number of salespeople who've lived in that building, right? Now you think about, what do presidents sell? Right? They sell their policies, their vision, and their wisdom sometimes, right? Now, some who have lived in that building have been really good salespeople. So I'm thinking about some of the good ones. Give me the names of some good salespeople. Throw out some names who lived in that building. All right, Ronald Reagan. So let's talk about this guy. We call him the great communicator. Why do we call him the great communicator? Well, as I looked through those gates, I wanted to nail it down, right? I started thinking, well, was it his charisma? Was it the fact that he was an actor? What is it? And I really couldn't find it, right? Then I started thinking some of the folks who haven't been good salespeople in there, and I said, all right, what do they have that I don't want? And I couldn't find the word, right? Well, I figured I'd probably better get out of there. Homeland Security's probably like, there is a short Irish guy in a red, white, blue Speedo outfit. Let's keep an eye on him. So I continue my jog, right? So I go over this hill, and I see this thing. And I say, man, that's cool. That's like a big sales trophy dedicated to a guy who did pretty well, right? And you think about what he sold. He had to sell a bunch of badly dressed militiamen and coming together and leaving the queen. We don't need them. That took a sales job. What did he have? How did he do it, right? And then I looked across this pond, and I saw one of the greatest salespeople in history. I said, I want to get close to him. So I went around that pond, I walked up those steps, and I just stared at him. And I looked at him and said, Abe Lincoln, one of history's greatest salespeople. How the heck did he overcome that common sales objection, that slavery is a good thing and that we need two separate nations, right? I said, well, boy, if I can have a little piece of Abe Lincoln, I'm going to be a better salesperson. What is it? And then I turned around and I took a step back, and I found a little plaque that said, I have a dream. And I thought of one of the greatest sales presentations ever delivered. And I thought, man, how did he do that? How did this guy get his people to believe? And then how did he sell this to folks who weren't real prospects? What are those skills, right? So I tried to nail it down to this one word, and a bunch went through my mind, but the word that I really thought of was pride, right? Pride. See, each one of these leaders who I just talked about, you had no doubt they totally believed in the product they sell, right? You had no doubt that Ronald Reagan believed communism was a bad thing, the Berlin Wall should fall. You had no doubt that Abe Lincoln thought that we should remain as one nation. And you had no doubt that this guy thought that white kids and black kids should go to school together. You see, what I was thinking is pride fuels the progress. You see, it's the gasoline that makes stuff happen. Now you're saying, all right, what does this have to do with selling insurance? When I'm not doing this, I have an opportunity to watch salespeople in action. I travel with them in their cars, or I'll sit next to them on the phone. And often I see salespeople delivering information, and they'll hang up that phone, or we'll walk out of that call, and I want to say, do you even like what you're selling, man? I can't tell, right? Do you like what you're selling? So it's kind of like what Bill said. Bill said people will say yes to you based more on emotion than logic. And so when you're in there serving people, I think it's important to use this word pride. Now, I want to share with you another great president, this guy, because he had an awesome sales presentation back in the 1960s. What was he selling the world? Does anyone remember? What was he selling the world on doing in the 1960s? All right, sending a man to the moon. Now check this out. He's got every black and white TV on across the country, and he's got to deliver his sales presentation. All right? So he has this idea that we can send a man to the moon. And oh, by the way, there's no materials that exist to put a man in orbit yet, but what the hell? So he gets in front of everybody, right, and he says, all right, here I go. He's got to convince them. And it's Boston brogue. He says, I believe that this nation should commit itself, before this decade is out, to land a man on the moon and return him safely to the earth. No space project will be more impressive to mankind or do more for the long-range exploration of space. And he walked off the podium and people said, Mr. President, you gonna do what? For real? Really? You didn't just say that, did you? Right? And here's the cool thing about JFK. Not only did he say we're going to do something that seemed crazy, but he put a date on it. Before this decade is out. And when did we land a man on the moon? Yeah, July 1969. Now, I want you to think of the average or below average salesperson, how they would have delivered that presentation. Might have sounded like this. Thanks for coming. I got this idea. Check it out, right? I'm thinking we put a man in a rocket, fire him off. Maybe he comes back, maybe not. It's a numbers game. Should we? I don't know. See, that's what I was thinking. Huh? You in? Why don't I leave a brochure and call me back if you're interested, right? No, he wouldn't have done that, right? And so here's the point. When he delivered that presentation with conviction, even though there was doubt amongst his prospects, they followed him because he believed. And then, of course, they sold it to others. So remember, use this word pride. And what it is, it's a personal commitment and it's an attitude. It's what everything you've been talking about here in your meeting, and certainly what Bill has talked about. So I'm going to give you 5 steps today that are going to make you better at stealing customers, better at selling more product and services than you ever did, and hopefully help you discount less. So first of all, the P of pride will stand for personal commitment. Now, let me tell you something. You can have the greatest attitude and enthusiasm in the world. You can have a personal commitment. But if we're not great communicators when we finally get that referral meeting, we're nothing but an enthusiastic idiot, right? So what we have to do is we have to R, which stands for reel them in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can influence everybody you touch. Not only current customers, but new customers, heck, your spouse and your kids if you do this right. Dale Carnegie wrote in one of his books back in the 1930s, and I will quote from that book. He says, I go fishing up in Maine every summer. When I go fishing up in Maine, I like to sit on the dock and I like to eat strawberries and cream. But I found for some strange reason, fish don't like strawberries and cream. Fish prefer worms. So when I'm hanging out in that dock up in Maine, I don't think about what I like. I instead think about what fish like. I don't bait my hook with strawberries and cream. Instead, I dangle a worm or a grasshopper in front of them and say, hey, which one makes most sense to you? Now, here's the cool thing about the principles being taught back in the 1920s and 30s. They still apply today when we get our meetings with our customers. So think about what he is saying. He's saying that when we fish for customers, or we have a current customer, we're trying to fish for additional products, maybe a new umbrella policy. We can't bait our hook with things that we like, but instead bait our hook with things the customer likes. Very, very important. And just because a policy, a product, a service is important to us doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be important to them. Let me tell you what I mean. Let's take this strawberry example. You see my little fisherman there? We have a strawberry. Well, what the strawberry is, let's say we've got a current customer who we're selling home and auto to, but they're perfect for an umbrella policy. And we set up that meeting through a referral, or maybe we set up our annual meeting and we sit down across the table and it's time to get that customer to bite on that strawberry, which is an umbrella policy. So we think through it. Logically, it makes sense for the client. Emotionally, I'm excited about selling this thing. I'm going fishing. I show up in that appointment 10 o'clock Tuesday morning. I've got my umbrella policy. It's time to put that on the poll. Well, here's where most salespeople blow it. They take this umbrella policy and their logic and emotion and that strawberry, and they start delivering it in the form of statements. And it might be like this. All right, Mary and Joe, I tell you, we've got you all set up. All the paperwork's done. Hey, by the way, Mary and Joe, I want to tell you some of the reasons why I think an umbrella policy is something you need to seriously consider. And what happens is we start delivering our value in the form of statements. We start telling them all the reasons why they need us and our product. But I will tell you, what I have learned is the greatest sales agents, the greatest salespeople, in fact, the greatest leaders don't talk that way. What they do is, in fact, they minimize the number of statements they make. Minimize the number of statements they make. And let me tell you what I mean. I want to take you back to your old high school class where you'll learn that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Same thing happens when we're sitting across the table of that customer and we start telling them all the reasons why they need us and our value, right? We start putting the statement to them, why they need us, and in their mind, in fact, what they are doing is they are developing a contrarian argument, right? So what is a contrarian? A contrarian is somebody who's disposed to taking an opposite opinion, somebody who's prone to opposing policies, opinions, accepted wisdom. In layman's terms, here's what it says. We've all had conversations with people who seem to disagree with everything we say, right? You might say, through a form of a statement, you know what, the weather's supposed to be beautiful on Friday. That's a statement. You know what the contrarian does in their brain? They think of something opposite. So they might say, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure it might be nice on Friday, but I heard it's supposed to cloud up on Saturday, right? Now, you know that same person, if you said, hey, you know, I heard it's supposed to cloud up on Saturday, you know what they'd say? Yeah, but you know what? It's going to be beautiful on Friday, right? See, you've all known people like this. Most of us call them spouses, right? Right? But you think about this. Why is it that when we make statements to people, the first thing they're going to do in their brain is think of the opposite opinion? Why do people do this? I want you to think about it. Whose opinion do we love the most? Right? It's our own. So while we, as the agent, are telling the customer all of the reasons they need us and our solutions, whose opinion is it? Whose opinion is most important? So why do we do most of the talking? Right? Now I want to tell you, I didn't always realize this. In fact, I want to share with you a day that I totally blew this. Now, of course, my father was in the insurance agency business forever. He had the Dodd agency in Waterbury, Connecticut. So I grew up in the insurance business. But when I got my first job out of college, I worked for a medical device manufacturer. Now, lucky for me, the products we sold, it was a long black scope with a TV monitor, otherwise known as a colonoscope, right? And judging by some of the folks in here, you no doubt have been on the receiving end of one of these things, right? All right? Now, so I lived in downtown Chicago. In fact, 4 houses over the left field wall of Wrigley Field. I was my company's top sales performer for 4 years straight. 26 years old, and I am cocky as they come. Number 1 out of 45, 4 years straight. Now, November 6, 1996, everything changed. It's the day that I went from believing I knew what sales was all about to realizing just how bad I was. Now, I have an appointment set up at the premier gastroenterology proctology office in downtown Chicago. And I walk into this office, right, and I have this TV monitor, I have this little light box, and this long black scope, right? Now, I walk into this place, and I thought I took a wrong turn and found myself at the Four Seasons Hotel. Man, there was leather couches and beautiful pictures. And I go through this door, and the receptionist says, come on back. And I set up my product in a procedure room, and I'm waiting for sales time, right? Waiting for those physicians to walk in the door. Now, in the door walk these 2 young, studly doctors. One was dressed to the nines, his hair slicked back. The other guy next to him, a little nerdy fella, had glasses and a white lab coat, and so in they walk, right? So they walk in like this, and I had this patented presentation, worked nearly every time. It went like this. Hey, doctors, thank you so much for having me. Beautiful office, I got to tell you. Hey, let me introduce you to the Welch Allyn Video Path Sigmoidoscope. You're going to love this thing. In fact, we invented a new CCD chip technology. That's a camera, by the way. Projects an image 70 centimeters down onto this screen. You're going to see 250,000 pixels of illumination. You're going to see things in that colon you've never seen before. All right? Now, the doctors, they were really nice. They're just kind of nodding their head, watching me go. And fortunate for me, they kind of liked the scope. Now, sales is a funny thing because a third of our customers are going to buy from us whether we stink at this job or not. Right? A third are never going to buy from us. It's that middle third who we're fighting over. Well, lucky for me, these were the two easy. This was the easy third. So I was feeling the mojo, right? So I sensed it was closing time, and I had this patented closing technique work for me for 4 years, kind of went like this. All right, so you want me to get you one of those? So you can't teach that. You're born with that. Right? Now, fortunate for me, right, the guy starts laughing. He's laughing, and he's laughing. Now, laughter is good in a sales call, but not when they're laughing at you, right? So I said, well, why are you laughing? And the cool guy says, hey, Brian, it's a beautiful scope. Don't get me wrong, but I got to tell you, him and I have no power in this office. We can't make any decisions. What's this thing, like 15 grand? I said, well, maybe, but who makes all the decisions? Cool guy says, his dad. I said, can you go get your dad? Nerdy guy says, no. Why not? Because he hates salespeople. You think he'll hate me? Oh, I know he'll hate you. Cool guy says, come on, we got to do this to him. We got to do this to him. He says, all right, but I'm not responsible, and off they go. So I'm wondering what's going to happen. All I know is I'm in a proctology office. This could get ugly, right? So I'm waiting 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Know what's happening here? Who's coming, right? And in the door walks one of the scariest fellas I'd ever seen. Looked like this. Right? In my book, I call him Popeye the Colon Man. He's bald, he's scaly, he's about 95 years old. He can barely walk. He's got his lab coat on. And here he comes. And he looks me up and down and goes, go. So I went. Hey, Doc, thank you so much. Hey, I really appreciate you having me here. Hey, I want to introduce you to the Well Channel Video Passing Monoscope. You're going to love this thing. And by the way, Doctor, you're going to need it. And here's why. We invented a new CCD chip technology. Projection is 70 centimeters down the screen. 250,000 pixels of illumination. You can see things that colon you've never seen before. And old Popeye never moved. Stayed like this. Right? Now, what do we do in a sales call when we're getting no feedback? Just keep talking, right? Well, lucky for me, I had this video printer. So I said, hey, Doc, nothing seems to be hitting home. I'm going to tell you something that you're definitely going to need. You're going to need this video printer. You have to take pictures of that colon. You know why, doctor? Because if you see a tumor or polyp, something, you take that picture, you put it in the chart. This is going to prevent you from ever being sued. Popeye did not like that one. He gets right up to my nose, right here, and he says, what? What'd you say? Well, I was just talking about that video printer. Son, let me tell you something. I've looked up more butts and back ends than you have hairs on that stinking head of yours. And I went, are you laughing at this? This is funny for you. He grabs my tie and starts leading me away in a proctology office. He takes me around in this hall, and he takes me to his office. He says, sit in that chair. And he slammed the door behind him, and I'm wondering what's going to happen. All right? And he starts hovering around me like a shark, and he says, oh, Junior, all you salespeople are exactly the same. You come into my office, and you talk, and you talk, and you talk. You don't know nothing about me. Junior, the formula's simple. You got two jobs. You got to find out what I'm thinking. You find out what I'm feeling. How do you do it? You ask me a couple questions. Don't too many of them. It's not a game show. But you know, you people think the job is to come in and educate me. How old are you, 12? Junior, you know what you did today? You embarrassed yourself by talking too much. You embarrassed your profession. Do me a favor, pack your bags, get the hell out. And off he goes. And I'm sitting in that chair like this. Mother. That's graduation day for me. November 6, 1996. It's probably the only reason I'm here today. It's the day that, once again, I went from thinking that our job is to know our products and services and educate. But you see, Popeye's formula was so simple. No, it's not. It's not our job. It's our job to try to get people to talk. so we know what they're thinking and know what they're feeling. Now, I had been to all the sales seminars, read the books like many skeptics like you. I was the worst sales student in the world. But I went back to my VP of sales. I told him what happened. He mocked me. And then he said, here's what we want you to do, Sullivan. We want you to create the sales training program at our company. And I said, maybe you didn't hear me. I'm not real good at this. He said, go do it. And that's where I became a student of this game. But I will tell you, the principles and the processes that we talked about, very much like what Bill talked about, is that you need to be repeatable, measurable, and sustainable. In other words, what we trained our people to do is when you finally get that coffee break with those customers, you're at their house or they come to your office, and it's go time, how can you act in a repeatable way, right? Well, I'm going to share with you 5 questions. Boy, I'd love to give you more today, but I want to give you 5 questions we started asking all of our customers that got them to tell us what they think and feel. I call it clear questioning, and I talk about it in my book, 20 Days to the Top. The C stands for, what are you currently doing? So I want you to think, let's say we're prospecting for a new customer who's using your biggest competitor. Well, who are you currently using? Well, we're currently using XYZ. The L, hey, have you looked at any other insurance companies, insurance providers lately? Well, in fact, yeah, we talked to someone 6 months ago. Really? What did you E, find effective about what they had to tell you? And I want to know all the reasons why they stay with who they stayed with or why they liked who they saw. The A is, well, what would you alter if you could? For instance, do you wish you heard from them more? Do you want more information? Help me better understand that. And this is where they will tell you the pains that they are experiencing. And then, has anyone in this room ever delivered their greatest sales presentation to the wrong person? Raise your hand. Yeah, we all do. So we got our people in the habit of asking every time, Joe, who as well as yourself is responsible for deciding which company is the best to go with? Right? So we made sure we had the right folks. These 5 questions were easy for our people to remember. They kept them focused. And by the way, they weren't the only questions you were to ask, but they are a great foundation to get your brain thinking. And what it does, it gets your mind off of making statements and gets your brain more on, I'm here to learn, man. I'm here to learn. All right, now, we're going to do a quick exercise. I'm going to have you all stand up here momentarily. Not yet. Here it is. All right, I'm going to have a little conversation with myself. I have issues here, right? I'm going to ask myself a question. And then I'm going to respond to myself, and then I'm going to ask my other self another question. So it might go like this. Hey, Brian, it's great being here at the American Family Insurance meeting. I got to tell you, it's an enthusiastic crowd. What do you think? Oh, I love it. I got to tell you, this is a blast. I mean, the people, they're into it. It's the last day. They're probably ready to get home with their families, and you probably miss yours. Yeah, I do miss mine. You know what, but I'll get the chance to see them later. Hey, how many kids do you have? Well, you should probably know this. You're talking to yourself. All right, you have 3. All right, now, so here's what we're doing. All right, we're all going to stand up. Go ahead and stand up. I want everyone to stand up. All right, you can stretch it out if you want. I want you right now to turn to the person next to you. Find somebody. And here's what I want you to do. All right, pay attention. I want you to ask them a question. Here's what you have to do. Ask them a question. Then respond to the question, and then come back and ask the other person a question. So all it is a dialogue. And I want to hear what you come up with. You have 60 seconds to learn as much as you can about that person. Ready? Go. Okay, all right, stop. Take a seat. Take a seat. Take a seat. Okay. All right. Quick question. Quick question. Did anybody learn something new about the person they spoke with? Raise your hand if you did. Okay, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. Now let me ask you something. if we didn't do this 1-minute exercise, do you think you would have learned that about that person? Okay. Are you smarter and better off, and in some ways more connected to that person right now than you were 2 minutes ago? Let me ask you this. Why does it take an exercise when that has someone telling you you need to question somebody to get closer and to learn from them? You see, here's my point. Isn't it amazing how, these days when we look for answers, where do we go? We go to Google. We go to the internet. Yet, if you look at the knowledge in this room, it blows Google away. We're sitting next to knowledge, yet I watch, and people aren't learning from each other. To make everything Bill Cates taught you today work, it starts with a hunger and a thirst to learn from everyone around you. There is no process that can make up for a lack of curiosity. Next, I want you to think about this. Did anybody find themselves after a question was asked of you, so it might have been like this, hey, do you have children? And you said, yeah, I got 3 kids. I got my boy and I got these 2 girls. And then you paused and kind of went, what do we do in the exercise? Oh, this is where I'm supposed to show interest in you. You got kids? Anyone find that little goofy pause or like, what are we supposed to do next? Here's the point. Questioning is not natural. And for salespeople, it's not natural. It's even more not natural because we think our job is to educate and we love the control of a conversation. Forget control. The more you learn from others, the more in control you will be. I'll tell you what, you want to blow the competition away? You just care more for your customer and you show it by asking questions. It really is. I think the byproduct of being a really good person is you sell a lot of stuff. How do really good people communicate? They're always asking questions and learning. What a great concept that is, right? All right, next. Let's talk about the I of pride. It's I will listen. Now, as I say these communication skills, let me tell you something, guys. It doesn't mean I've arrived, all right? Listening skills are perhaps the hardest thing in the world, but I think the most valuable. And I want to share with you a story. I was in my office writing my book, 20 Days to the Top. Now, this was just a few years ago. Now, I'm a salesperson, guys. I'm not an author, all right? So when I sat down to write this book, I had to learn how to write a book. And they said it's supposed to be 20 chapters long, 10 pages a chapter. So I said, I'm going to write this book in 20 weeks, which meant I could not start my weekend until I wrote the last word. I made a deal with myself. Well, it's 4:30 in the afternoon, and I'm writing the listening skills chapter of my book, and I wrote 2 pages, and I got nothing else to write about. I ran out of stuff, right? And I'm all frustrated because I want to start my weekend. Well, in the door walks my 4.5-year-old boy, Jake. And Jake comes in, and I'm typing away, and I'm trying to think of something to write about. And he says, Daddy, look at this. I made this construction paper apple tree at school, and I got to use the Elmer's glue, and Miss Smith said I could use the scissors, but not the sharp ones because you could cut yourself. And he's talking. He's giving his greatest sales presentation. I'm pulling the patented faker listening technique. You know this one, right? You just kind of, and you'll throw out a couple words to make them think you're with them. You'll say, oh, glue, scissors, Smith, right? And of course, he's talking. And finally, he knew I was blowing him off because my body language is saying, I'm really not that interested. He's disappointed. He walks away. I'll never forget this. He walks away. He says, all right, Daddy, bye. And I said, Jake, I'm so sorry. Daddy's got to finish this, but I want to see that later, okay? It's important. All right, hey, shut the door behind you. And I got back to important things. 8:30 that night, I finished, typed my last word, went through spell check, this editing software, and I started reading what I wrote. And it said, don't ever fake listen, especially with your most important customers. They'll know you're faking and they won't forget it. And I read that and I said, got it? I ran out to that kitchen. I said, Jake, I'm sorry. Oh, you got your jammies on. That's good. Hey, Jake, I'll tell you what. I want to see that. Let me see that. And of course, what's he do? No, it's okay, Daddy. Jake, come on, I want to see it. It's real important. You said you got to use the glue and scissors? No, it's okay. I already showed it to Mommy. Show me the tree, Jake! I said, okay. I didn't do that. All they wanted to, right? Now, here's the thing. The lesson for me, first of all, I thought, geez, should I traumatize this kid? And I said, no, probably not that. I probably traumatized him a lot. But I thought about this. I said, holy cow, 2 lessons I learned. One, Sullivan, don't be a hypocrite and write books and pages about being a good listener when you're horrible at it. You better work on it. And number 2 is what I thought. I said, wow, if it's so easy for me to fake listen with one of my #1 customers, right? Because at that time, I only had 3 number 1 customers in my life. My wife, Leanne, my boy, Jake, and my little Shay. And I was working on my 4th customer at the time. Who says cold calling can't be fun? Right? And I thought about this. I said, if I'm so bad listening with them, how am I with the people I only kind of care about? So I made a commitment. I said, I know we're all tired. We come home, big busy days, and we need me time. We need me time. But then I thought, if American Family Insurance CEO called me at any time, would I say, sorry, Dave, it's me time. So why would I do it to them? So I have a job for you. By the way, I want to introduce you to my boy at 4.5 years old. That's Jake. My wife says, why do you use that picture? He looks like Chucky from the horror movie. All right? But I have a job for you. You're all getting an opportunity to go home today, or many of you. I want you to go home and I want you to find one of your number 1 customers, and I want you to ask this question. Am I a good listener? And when they're telling you, don't fake listen. Don't think about what you're going to say next. In fact, you're not allowed to say anything next except thank you. And the habit that you will create is when I ask questions, I'm doing it because I want to learn. And that's a habit that will make you a better friend, a better parent, a better brother, sister. But you know, more importantly, it's not more importantly. Actually, the spin-off is you're just going to be better with other people. And that will lead to referrals and current customers and stealing customers from the biggest competitor. So try it with your family. All right, next, as we slide down the list, we have deviate, deviate. Now, I'm a big fan of deviation. I'm a big fan of, you know that sick pit in your stomach you get when you're doing something kind of weird, right? You know, you shouldn't be doing it, right? Like, ooh, it's kind of risky. I'll feel stupid, right? It's adrenaline. It's a gift from God to remind you you're still alive. And if you haven't felt it in a while, you might be dying, right? So you've got to find ways, honestly, find ways in your business to feel that sick pit. Now, I want to share with you a day when I felt this very sick pit. I was in Chicago's O'Hare Airport, United Terminal, and I had been covering for one of my sales reps in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And I was tired. It's Friday afternoon, and I get off this plane, I'm greasy, and I just want to get home. And I'm walking this way, right? And a police officer stops me. He says, stop, stop, stop. People, let's go. Follow everybody, guys. There's a rope right here. Please, let's go. You can't come this way. Follow the people. Come on. And so I do what he tells me, and I'm walking this way, and we're like a herd of cows. I mean, there's hundreds of us walking this way. And I look back at the officer, and there was a rope, and I noticed a bunch of people walking where he said they're not supposed to walk. But that's a shorter distance to where I'm going. So what do? I kind of look at him, and I went under that rope, because I wanted a short way. And I start walking, and I'm trying to hide from him, and I heard, oh! I turned around, and I thought it was a police officer. In fact, it wasn't a police officer. The noise had come from here, and I had found myself in the middle of a Hollywood movie set. That was a director who said, roll 'em. So, of course, I acted like I belonged, got my sachet going, right? And as I walk by, there's 2 actresses. One is Cameron Diaz. The other one's Julia Roberts. I'm saying, oh, my God, this is fun. Now, I was just going to keep walking, right? Because they said, all right, cut, people, cut. But there was all this movie equipment here, and I couldn't go anywhere. And I looked over, and there were thousands of people behind these ropes, and about 25 of us and 2 actresses. And, of course, they say, all right, people, you need to get back to your position. I had a decision to make, didn't I? Okay. Now I get back to this position, and I unfortunately stole someone's position. This guy, I call him Birdman. He had a Hawaiian outfit on, big white beard, makeup all over his face. And he looks at me, he says, sir, you're in my spot. So I'm trying to play cool, right? So, oh, sorry, bud. I step back here. Birdman would not let me go. He says, that's not your spot either, is it? Now I'm trying to get behind him.